welcome to episode 156 of Storyteller Conclave. This is a show all about helping you run the best tabletop role-playing game that you can. Whether you're a new storyteller or dungeon master learning the craft, or an experienced storyteller looking to take your game to the next level. I am Sarah. Rob will be here in just a second.
I'm trying it.
We are wrangling some kitten stuff real quick. So
yeah, it's not that bad.
They have turned into little naked kitten darters.
Yeah, that's a pretty accurate.
They see an open door and they go darting for it. So just quick help wrangle them.
Yeah, not a big problem. So, yeah.
Welcome back. Take a deep breath.
Yeah, I'm gonna need a minute. Anywho, hi.
Hi.
We had some games this weekend.
Oh my god, we had a big
gaming weekend.
Wall-to-wall gaming extravaganza.
Well, and it wasn't intentional, but it had to happen.
Yeah, it was one of those ones where, like, when you're scheduling, I don't like scheduling 2 games in a weekend because it does kind of eat the whole weekend up.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of energy to do that. But, things being what they were, one of our players was going out of town pretty soon, so there was a bunch of scheduling and stuff like that. And
yeah. So and we may not have either of our sessions for possibly over a month.
Maybe 2 months or something like that.
Yeah. So
which is actually fine with me, because we're getting to the climax of my story, and I want to be extra sweaty, try hard with the terrain and the minis that I have in order. I had things really well set up for the end of last game, but we didn't end up getting to the combat that was potentially going to happen.
I think that's a good thing in the end.
It is a good thing in the end. But I have it set up if indeed it does go that direction.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got now probably 2 months to get other things set up as well. So
yeah, and it'll give me time to build all of the stuff that I need to in my digital maps, and kind of flush out some of the other things that I need to, and it puts me beyond some of my work stuff, so it gives me that access.
Yeah. Your work's been really busy lately.
Yeah, it's every 6 months, so
yep.
Yeah. It's like tax season every 6 months, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
But, that being said, I will say, to not move on to the topic just yet, your game in particular went exceptionally well.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Because you did a lot of hard moves in it, which, through the knowledge that we talked about, where a hard move is where the storyteller doesn't necessarily totally remove agency, but pauses the scene to make an event occur. And that is a plot-related event. Yeah, it is not...
The Titanic hitting the iceberg is a hard move.
It's a hard event, yeah. It's not like the crew is going to see it before they hit it. Mm-hmm. It is an event that's going to occur to make things happen. A lot of times, like Part of the Apocalypse has the Doom Clock, and they use hard moves in that to help trigger those moments that occur.
Yep.
And I think you had several of them. Some of those hard moves didn't feel like hard moves. They felt just like plot progressions, which was the best part about it. But I think one of the things you did really well, which was expressed by one of the players, was that right at the beginning, before we even started, you were like, I'm going to be doing hard moves. These will be things. There will be moments where I'm like, this is happening. And then you'll say, one of you might be like, well, I'd like to do this. We're like, this is a hard move. And we're just going to move through it.
Yep.
That little bit of primer for our group was all that was necessary.
It's just set proper expectations. That way nobody feels cheated, when I'm like, oh, this is happening. Well, we didn't get any chance to avoid that. Well, no. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes stuff just happens, But, yeah, no, I thought the communication with the group was really good. The other kind of thing that I did too was I had written a lot of my plot based around a really good plan that you guys had made. Mm-hmm. Kind of pitting the two potential villains of the story against one another.
Yes.
And I was like, I love this plan. I love that it came out of you guys organically and stuff like that. I said, I'm gonna write my plot around that, and it's gonna be a really good reveal when you guys execute that plan. And then right before my game, I was like, okay, I know we haven't played in a while. You guys made a really good plan. I need you to stick to that plan. Because I did an awful lot of writing, and none of that makes any sense if you guys don't go with the plan you made. And to be clear, it was a really good plan. Please do it.
No, I think that was also a good expectation to set. I really do. I think the whole thing went off in one of the best ways that it ever has. We had some great role playing. and some wonderful moments that I kind of want to dissect later. And I think we're gonna talk about one of those in one of our future shows when we're trying to talk about mysteries.
Yeah,
because I felt that it came very clean.
There was almost a little murder mystery in this.
Very much so. And I think that went really well. And another thing, I'll see where it eventually fits in, is what we were talking, Heatsink actually brought up at game, that difference in individual player to group agency, where he was still able to be his character within the group, which is something that was different about the way the system runs. And I think there was a lot to be kind of dissected out of that.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool. So.
Well, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I felt really good about it, and got a lot of really great feedback from my players. One thing I did at the end of this game, too, that I've talked a little bit about, but I've forgotten to implement it heavily until this game, was we did our roses and thorns, the good thing and the bad thing, about the game. But I added a third question, and that was, what would you like to see happen next game? If it was your ideal session in your mind's eye, how does it play out? And, some of it was just, we want to get the bad guy.
Right.
Okay, cool. But some of it was like, I really want to see this character play a bigger part in the story or something like that. I want to see this particular little subplot come to fruition. Yep. And those tell me what my players are focused on, what's important to see in there. And it gave me some really great ideas, some really good little story prompts. And I literally, on the drive home, was already having great ideas of I never would have thought to do this, but
now I will.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually, because one of the things that I had brought up is that we had kind of lightly addressed several times the importance of one of the NPC's wives. That she's sick, and it's a linchpin to the story. And I kept getting this image of, during the fight and all of this going on, her coming to a balcony barefoot in a white smock, face still kind of, pale from where she was at, but she's up and moving, and the things that could mean.
Yeah.
Was she kept sedated because they couldn't control her, or did she wake because of some other reason? All of those things going through the minds of all of the people involved beyond us, and what that could, the implications. There's so much story that could come out of a single moment. I was like, that'd be really cool. I want to see her involved. I want to see what you do with that.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
I don't want her to be an afterthought, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, no. She's definitely the third party involved in the plot.
Yeah.
But you haven't heard from her.
No, not at all.
So.
No, she's, and from a storyteller's perspective, I see so much follow-up. Because again, you get one of those situations where you have a follow-up NPC, someone who's involved, who has not been directly, who's the third party, can suddenly hand you the next thing, the next lead.
Yeah.
Without even realizing, without them recognizing it, but that's where the plot moves to. And I'm like, those are great things. You want those moments.
Yeah, absolutely.
So. But today, we have a generalized topic that kind of keeps coming back around a lot online.
Yeah, so the topic of discussion today is, a magic item destroyed my game.
I've seen this a lot online. I've seen this a lot it was funny was when I ran my initial search, I excluded Reddit because I'd done, Reddit had so many. I did a Google search without it, and I actually found old forums from and I say old, I mean 90s and a little beyond, that were still out there, that literally this quote existed. And it wasn't always magic item destroyed my game, but I saw item destroyed my game.
Yeah.
And I was like, how many of these are out there? This is a huge problem.
Yeah.
And the solutions vary wildly, and the feelings vary wildly about how to handle these situations. It does tend to resolve around very tactical games.
Yeah.
And not the narrative ones. Not to say that they don't.
Well, because narrative games have a lot of padding on them, where power curve does not matter so much.
Right.
You know, you can give someone a phenomenal tool to, fix a lot of problems in a narrative game, and narrative players in a narrative style game will use it in a narrative way, but in a tactical game like Dungeons and Dragons, they're going to use it in a tactical way, and the game system teaches you how to play it.
Mm-hmm.
Narrative game systems tell you to tell a story with it.
Yeah.
What's fun, what's interesting. Tactical games tell you exploit every weakness for maximum efficiency.
Yeah, maximize the numbers.
Yes.
One of my favorite quotes about that was a guy was quoting a movie scene, and that was, how do you know when the moment is desperate for that the moment is truly desperate for the action hero in a contemporary movie?
Mm-hmm.
He checks how many rounds he has left.
Ooh.
That's the desperation moment. You will always know the desperation, even if he's moving through looking successful.
Mm-hmm.
Like the moment that they check, that couple seconds, if you see that edited into a movie, you've just hit the desperation point.
That's a really good point. Like, I never would have put two and two together, but yeah, that's...
When your players check their hit points.
All right, how's everybody doing?
How many spells do we have left? How many hit points do we have left?
Yep.
So what are we talking about when we say a magic item? That's kind of a generic statement, but I think it covers a lot more than just magic items.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it doesn't have to be a magic item. We're not just talking about D&D here, but to keep our discussions system agnostic. So, we're talking about, the magic sword, a space laser, the Necronomicon, maybe even a noble title or access to a powerful and sympathetic NPC. Something that can be exploited to quickly and easily solve a number of problems.
So, I guess the real question is why do we need to have a magic item? Like, what's the need to set this in motion? What puts it out there?
Well, I think it's a lot of different things. We play games for an escapist power fantasy primarily.
Okay, I agree with that.
There's a lot of different reasons we play games and stuff like that, but we want these awesome moments where we, in our character's shoes, can do awesome power fantasy stuff.
Right.
And so, as storytellers, we want to facilitate those moments for our players. I think.
All right, I'm fair with that.
So for me, I like giving out, special tools and stuff like that for characters that will enhance what they're trying to go for with their character to further their story, but also make them feel more powerful in whatever role that they're trying to play in the group.
Yeah.
I want them to feel awesome. I want to be a fan of my players.
I agree with that.
And I feel like magic items are one of the easiest and quickest ways to do that.
That's fair. I think for me it kind of falls slightly different because I kind of see like when the players are getting magic items, or at least it used to be in my head, they were, stock things that the game generated. Like they were just better loot. That's all it was. If I'm playing Borderlands or one of those games and a box of loot falls apart, some of that may be rare. There's a percentage chance of that kind of a thing. And so that's where most of the magic items fall in. But like when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about something significant that I'm giving them that is related to plot or is
related
to helping with that engagement with the plot.
Yeah, sure.
Like you did a fine job of that with in our Tamriel game by giving us a bag of holding effectively that solved problems. So I think there is a key difference that sits between us here that where we're applying those magic items. There's a certain sense of what their intent was and how they end up getting used.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the breakdown between what the storyteller believes and what the player presents in the end.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You can do things with it, but like D&D, like you said, is about rewards. We want that. We want that to be there, and there's an expectation that it doesn't go beyond that point. Like when someone goes to a store and they're like, oh, can I get a +1 sword? There's kind of an intent that you're going to use the +1 sword to cut things apart.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
That's pretty straightforward, and that kind of, whether or not you present that within, a magical box or the players, get a bunch of gold and they're going to go make something or build something.
Yeah.
There's that point where you're okay with it. Even if they're crafting something or asking for something to be crafted, there's an intent there of how it's going to be used. I think the stage where we start handing things to players that they're not asking for is where we start losing that line between how it's intended to be used and what they're going to use it for. And there's a lot of places where in movies this happens, and in books where players are handed things.
Oh, sure. No, and I think that's really where a lot of this stuff goes off the rails for us storytellers, honestly. Okay. Because, we did an entire episode, one of our Storyteller 101s, on where we draw our inspiration from, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it was all stories, books, movies, TV shows, all these things. But the thing is, though, is that when we're pulling inspiration from those, and we want our stories to play out like them. Yeah. Because this is really cool, high-budget cinematic media. Yeah. Right?
Frodo getting the chainmail, or Bilbo getting, Sting.
Sure,
things like that.
I mean, any media whatsoever. We want to emulate these awesome, high-budget Hollywood productions and stuff like that. In our mind's eye, that's how we see it all happening. The difference is, though, is that all of these stories that we are drawing inspiration from are scripted.
Yes.
Right? One person sat down and wrote how this story plays out, and how the characters use that item.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, Frodo getting, Frodo and Sam getting, their color change cloaks,
Yeah, the disguise cloaks, yeah.
Right, so J.R.R. Tolkien sat down and wrote that. Mm-hmm. He said, this is a Chekhov's gun, I'm going to give him in Act 1, and then in Act 3, they're going to need to hide from a bunch of soldiers, and whoop, they turn into rocks, they turn invisible, and that's cool. We saw the Chekhov gun get given to them, and we saw it go off in the third act. Boom. Perfect. Okay. The problem is that you can't do that in a tabletop role-playing game.
Right.
Because when you give color change, when you give on-demand invisibility to your players, they don't go, oh, this is a neat Chekhov's gun. I will wait until the third act to use it once tactically.
Right.
They go, you mean I can turn invisible whenever I want?
Mm-hmm.
And guess what happens?
Yeah.
And then you go, oh no, I saw this happening a lot more cinematically.
Yeah. Oh, there's these eagles that are going to save people, because we have a good relationship with them. Hey, can we just fly those to Mordor instead of, walking?
Yeah, exactly. It works in Lord of the Rings, but if you put those eagles, you can summon eagles and they can carry off this thing. Cool. What else can they carry?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But it's all those types of things that fit into the ridiculously of what a novel or a movie can do. And we even say that it's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. We recognize that.
Oh, yeah, the giant eagles have become probably the biggest Lord of the Rings in-joke,
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
That, and did you know that when he kicked the helmet, he actually broke his toe?
Yeah. Very true.
But, a lot of this discussion reminds me of the rule of cool discussions that go on as well.
Yeah.
Where they're not so much about magic items, but about when you rule of cool something, the monk wants to jump off the top of a balcony or something like that, and land on top of somebody and punch them on the way down. And you're like, okay, yeah, cool. Since you're landing on top of them and attacking from above, I'll give you advantage on the roll.
Yeah.
In their minds, then, they don't hear, that's rule of cool, that's a one-off.
Right.
They hear, oh, if I'm dropping from above, I get advantage.
Yeah.
And then the next 7 fights, they're like, I'm going to jump up on this, and then I'm going to come down on top of them. Do I get advantage?
Yeah. Or I get advantage, so I'm going to roll. They don't even say it. They just, I'm going to roll with advantage.
I get advantage because I'm coming down on top of them, and you're like, no, that's not how that works. Well, it did in that one fight.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
A lot of, especially in tactical games.
Yeah.
That ends up happening. And when you give them a magic item where it's oh yeah, this thing can on demand turn you invisible, or you've got these giant eagles that can carry things for you. Well, then they start playing with it. They start exploring the possibilities.
Yeah, it was funny because we just had the Lord of the or was it the One Ring as
Yep.
So the question came up, but then again, isn't Lord of the Rings a role playing game? Aren't items like that omitted? The answer is no. They do exist in it. They're just very rare and individual, and have a cost.
Yeah.
So
have a cost, or have some narrow circumstances under which you can use them.
Correct. Actually, I think there's a spirit cost for making that happen.
It's
still a check. But the whole idea is that it is a cost, and because of that cost difference, it makes a significant difference.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but not only that, they're exceptionally rare. They're not something that happens, and they're a narrative choice for the player to get. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, you gotta take your choices about when you get things.
Yep.
So, all right. So let's talk a little bit about like how these things come into play. Like by what machinations does a storyteller or a story present these between the storyteller and the players?
These overpowered items seeping into the story.
Yeah, overpowered items, NPCs, whatever, right?
Well, first and foremost,
right.
I mean, if we're going right back to our roots, the old dungeon crawling, for treasure thing, honestly, random treasure tables.
Yes.
You roll those double odds on a random treasure table, and suddenly a holy avenger lands in the lap of the party at level 5.
Yeah,
and
boots of striding, all kinds of ridiculous things can pop out of that. A rare magical item or a legendary item, are still possible.
And I mean, there's a lot of schools of thought too, where especially like you look at like OSR games, or your older school Dungeons and Dragons players who don't lean into the narrative stuff as much as we do, and don't think about structuring their story as much as they do, as much as we do. And again, that's not a negative. That's just a stylistic choice.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who play D&D and they love the random tables. They love the chaos of it all. Of like, we sit down at the table and anything could happen.
Right.
And that's the excitement of the game for them. You know?
Yeah.
And there are people who look at those random loot tables and think like, man, if a Holy Avenger rolled up on there, wouldn't that be awesome? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, sure, at certain tables, I'm sure it is. At certain other tables, though, that can really tilt your game,
Yeah, it's and finding that line of, is that part of the story, kind of makes or breaks whether or not it is an overpowered item.
Yeah, it really does.
So
it really does.
Yeah. I think necessity is a thing, and I think that necessity can come out of a couple of different directions. I would say that sometimes necessity comes from the story side. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, I don't need my players literally after every game asking if there's a tavern or someplace that they can at least get a decent rest in. I'm going to hand them an item that creates, Leoman's hut for them, so that we can continue going across my barren wasteland without them constantly having to do an hour worth of physical at table time doing checks to see if their area is safe, because that's we're beyond that point. Like, they're 10th level characters. It's fine.
Yeah.
And it comes out of necessity. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And now you've given them an on-demand 10-foot safe space that they can put anywhere.
Correct.
And they start using it to barricade hallways.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. They ride a dragon and slap it on its head.
Right.
Things like that. And suddenly now it's, great. Now it's an impervious structure, effectively, that can crush and topple whole, worlds.
Yep. I would say there's an aspect of like, trying to bring them in as a curse.
Oh, cursed items. Okay.
Cursed items. You brought up the list. Percy's gun from Legend of Vox Machina and Critical Role.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of, I want to say, carried in as far as the animation was concerned. Of the reason it seemed like it was presented with the character, not so much handed because of something. But I think that that's an appropriate way that it can come in, that they come in cursed.
Yeah.
I often wonder, like, bringing a group, like, I feel like games where all the characters come in with a curse of some kind is always a neat concept. But at the same time, like, what if the player character of Percy just decided not to kill that last person and keep their super uber powerful gun? I
actually know the answer to that.
There you go.
I actually know the in-game answer to that.
Yeah.
For me, it is curse items are one of those, like, you gotta be really careful with them, because oftentimes our mentality is, it does something really awesome, but it's cursed, so it also comes with a detractor, right? It comes with a cost. Like, every time you do this, every time you kill a demon, an innocent peasant dies.
Yeah.
Well, cool, but I still get to slay demons with it?
Yeah.
Awesome. Like, needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Imagine how many innocent peasants that demon would kill.
Yeah, we'll go resurrect him. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. If your players will immediately look at ways to mitigate the cost.
Yes.
And if you haven't taken all those amazingly creative player moves into account when you give them this item, you sit there wringing your hands like the evil mastermind that you are, going, ha 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 ha, this will be a huge moral dilemma for them. It will do this awesome thing, but they will have to make the decision to whether or not they will suffer the awful cost. And they go, actually, it's not that awful of a cost. We can just do this, this, and this and mitigate it completely.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I did give you those other things, didn't I?
Or not even that. They're already just a step ahead because they're comfortable with doing that. The player is comfortable with doing that.
Yep.
We're still thinking from the character side.
Yep.
And I think that's the thing.
Yep.
And I think that's where the rule of cool comes into play as well, with where you might present them with something that they can do that's just adjacent to the rules, or a sidestep of part of the rules, and then suddenly the math now is in the favor of the player.
Yeah.
Regardless of if the character is aware, is irrelevant. It is the player who is ultimately handling the tactics behind everything, and they're going to drive in that direction.
Yep, absolutely.
So, confiscated stuff.
Yeah. This one is the bane of my existence, man.
Yeah.
Because you want to give your BBEG, your big bad evil guy, or even just his lieutenants, you know, you want to give them cool equipment that is like defining to them, you know. You remember Ceridwen, the leader of the Voiceless Ones, is that a wood elf who was a leader of a band of assassins.
Yep.
That was one of the bandit groups that was out in the Highlands. She had this amazing bow that had like 30 feet range or something like that. Like, the range was like super low, but it like tripled the damage within that range.
Right.
You could not snipe with it whatsoever, but it was a magnum up close. Yeah. And I loved that weapon, but every single time I was writing my characters and I'm going like, oh, what if they had the... No, I can't give them that, because what if they just kill the character? Then everything I put in the hands of a big bad evil guy, I have to think this is going to end up in the hands of the party.
Correct.
You know?
And that you always have to consider that because it's in their mind frame.
Oh yeah. They're going to look at that and go, cool, I want to kill this person and take their treasure.
Yep. You know, or not even like, oh, you can't you can't take that from them. It's grafted their body. Great, we'll figure that out later.
I lopped the hand off. Let's go.
Yeah, shove his hand into the bag of holding and lob it off at the wrist. We'll figure it out later.
Yep.
And now it's there.
You will absolutely watch players do that.
Yep.
Yes.
And then you'll see the barbarian reach into the bag, pull out the dude's hand, and wield the hand with the weapon. You know, or if we want to go back to ancient Greece, you know, pulling Medusa's head out of the bag to kill the Gorgon. Yeah, same thing.
I mean, that's codified in ancient lore
that's
right, you know?
That's right. But it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. But I think that leads to the one thing that I kind of always gets me is that the quality of life concept.
Yeah.
Whether or not you're doing it from the story side or from the player's side, you know, maybe you're just eliminating things. One of the ones that is a good example in my head that happens in stories is giving them the ability to travel at a certain point. To take you don't have to ride everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, oh look, in Final Fantasy, Sid shows up with his airship. Now you have an airship to go around in.
Now you have an airship, yep.
Why? Because we're sick and tired of you having to go through every inch of the map, which means we have to make every inch of the map. You know, now we don't have to do that. But now they have an airship and they can literally go anywhere.
Yeah.
Crap. Yeah. You know, there's that whole edge of it. And, you know, or the one thing that I brought up that we went back and forth about on, not so much that I was against you, but I wanted to talk it through, and that was the sheath of returning.
Yeah.
You know?
So Vax'ildan in Legend of Vox Machina and Critical Role has a sheath of returning. Now, if you watch the anime, I keep calling it anime. If you watch the cartoon, I don't think they explained it at all. but you may have seen his daggers teleporting back to him after he threw them. And that's because he has a magic item. It's actually the sheath, and that way it's not tied specifically to the dagger itself. He can change out whatever magical daggers he wants, but he can sheath up to 2 daggers in it, and when he throws them, they return to him. So he can throw daggers, and...
They just keep coming back.
And he keep coming back.
And realistically, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
It feels like it should be overpowered, but it's not.
See, for me though, and you look at that, and this is kind of where our discussion went, was you initially were like, well, that seems really OP, and I'm like, why? What problem is it solving?
Right.
And when you look at it, all it does is it puts daggers, which do D4 damage, and have like a 20-foot throwing range.
Right.
On par with a bow. Because really, realistically, how many of us actually track ammunition? Is that one of the quickest quality of life improvements we make to the game, is just not worrying about the number of arrows you've got.
Right.
And so, ideally, if we're not tracking it for archers, who have hundreds of feet of range, especially if they're using like a longbow, are we really worried about tracking the daggers that this guy throws?
Well, and I think that's one of the things that we kind of have to address with this whole thing, is that one component that you just said. If the thing that it's solving isn't a big deal in the first place, that he has to retrieve his daggers, if that's just annoying, it's not like a big mechanic.
Yeah, imagine as a storyteller, like you throw your daggers, you need to worry about, did it get stuck inside the monster or did it drop in the space?
Right.
If you missed, where did it land?
Right. But I think the point that you had said during our research, which I loved, was what important plot reason, or what important part of the mechanic that it's solving affects plot or affects the story. And if the answer is it doesn't, then get rid of it. It's fine. It does. It's not that big of a deal. Move on. And that little nugget is enough to make the I guess not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it the fact that you guys have rare munition? That, like, you want your guys looking at the last bullet in their clip and being like, crap.
Oh, sure.
Like, at that point, no.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. Like, I mean, and that actually comes up a little bit like in the Chroma Conclave arc. It's going to be, I think, season 2 of the cartoon. Is somewhere along the way in the tabletop game, Matt gave them as treasure, like, a single dragon slaying arrow. And it does, like, 46 extra damage against a target as long as it's a dragon. And so, I mean, yeah, that was part of their planning then. Then it was like, okay, we've got one of these. We better make this shot count.
Right.
And try to crit,
right.
Sort of thing with it. But yeah, I mean, just normal arrows, why are we bothering?
Yeah.
Normal daggers, why are we bothering?
Right. So, how does this happen? How do we go from, it's a magic item, to, oh dear God. What is that avenue?
Usually for me, unforeseen consequences.
That's fair.
Unforeseen consequences.
So explain that. Elaborate on your unforeseen consequences.
So it's a bit like I was talking earlier about the Lord of the Rings thing. We close our eyes and we go, what's going to look cool in our game? What's gonna make this player at my table feel more powerful as a Dragonborn, or make them feel more powerful as a Khajiit archer, things like that. And you think like, okay, well, cool, I can give them this thing that maybe like once a day they can do this extra thing on top of it. And again, in our mind's eye, we see it cinematically. We're looking at the benefit to the story. We're looking at the benefit to the player's happiness of feeling good about their character and such like that. At least that is for me. And we're not always thinking from the 200 different angles we need to be of what rules does this thing interact with.
Right.
Do they have something on their character sheet that we forgot about that will allow them to use that magic item plus their special ability to every single turn one-shot an enemy or something like that,
Right.
And usually these things only happen once you've already got them in play. You give them the magic item, and they go, oh, it does this? Yeah, it does this. It's like, oh, that's cool. Can I use it with this special ability? And you're like, Yeah, I don't see why not. Cool, okay, this combos with this, and combos with this, and I get plus 27 to that, and I auto-crit. And you're like, wait, no. No, that's not... Oh, boy.
So, a simple thing. A guy was given a staff of growth. Now, It doesn't make you grow. Mm-hmm. It can just extend. Kind of like the old D&D cartoon, where the guy's staff could extend out to a ridiculous length. Or the one girl's staff. I'm sorry, girl's staff. And so it could go from being just like a 5 foot, or a 4 foot half, all the way out to, or compress down to 1 foot, or could extend out to, let's say 10 feet. 10 or, could become a 10-foot pole whenever needed, right? Doesn't seem like it would be that big of a deal, right? Mm-hmm. Except if you're like, hey, can I make an acrobatics check and put it underneath my foot and use it to push me up 10 feet? Because it can extend, and it extends instantaneously, right?
Yeah.
So that puts me 10 feet up whenever I want to be 10 feet up, and that puts me above targets.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
And the math starts rolling from there.
Yep.
Or it extends and contracts in an instant, meaning I can do it whenever. Oh, so it doesn't take me a bonus action. Great. I'm going to press buttons at distance. Mm-hmm. I'm going to check for traps at a distance. I can always, basically like a blind person, snap, 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 snap as I move forward.
Yep.
Yep. Or you make the excuse of, well, without force, you can't. It extends on its own. Meaning, whenever it extends that distance, it'll just extend and stop. Great. I'm going to use that into the darkness.
Oh yeah, so I can tell how far things
something
are
is
away. Yeah.
Yep. And or if the hole's actually deep or anything like that. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So suddenly it's like, great. That just it's starting to remove now. That's the unforeseens, that we can't calculate the number of things that they're going to use it for.
Yeah.
So
the other one, as kind of what I was talking about earlier, was the rule of cool thing, where like you let something happen once, and then all of a sudden it just goes out of hand from there.
Yeah.
Because it's like Knox in the box is saying in the live chat, he says, you were thinking constructively when you made the item.
Yes.
Your player was thinking destructively when they used it.
Yeah.
And that's not, and I wouldn't even say that in a derogatory way. Like the player was thinking destructively. Mm-hmm. Because I think in certain game systems, D&D being one of them, you almost need to. Mm-hmm. Because of its combative nature.
Right.
Because of its tactical nature, you need to find the edge. You need to find, most of your goal is destroying, overcoming obstacles, destroying your enemies.
Yep.
And whatnot. And so you almost need to think destructively on things. Mm-hmm. You're not thinking about things you can make. You're thinking, how can I exploit this for a tactical advantage?
Yep.
And I think that's perfectly viable.
Yeah.
But it is a thing that happens, and that's how one of these situations happens,
Yeah. And, I actually, had considered, a few times, situations like that when I was presenting my D&D game and bringing things up, and had to think around them. Like, they were already, like, whatever it is already in use with something, so you'd have to destroy something to be able to use it as something else. So, like, the rods that I had for the ship, Vampa's ship, his airship that he had, he was actually using immovable rods in unique ways to move an entire ship through the air. Okay. And that's how he was flying. He wasn't using any other magic beyond that.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yep. But if you wanted them, you'd be taking the ship apart, basically.
Heatsink says, y'all sound salty for creative use of things.
We do. But
it's a little bit of that.
It's a little bit of that, but at the same time, I think it's that error that we talk about that is still stuck in the back of our heads of us versus them.
Yeah.
But it's not the aggressive side of it's the, crap, I didn't think about that.
So for me, I mean, it's not that I don't want my players to be creative. Mm-hmm. I'm not salty that people use things in creative ways.
Right.
What I think really gets me is, the feeling of being unprepared and blindsided by things.
Okay.
And I think, there's a big difference between I used an item in a creative way to solve a problem. Mm-hmm. And I am going to use this thing every single opportunity to resolve every single problem I can, like a magical Swiss Army knife, and you will never be able to challenge me ever again because I have this thing.
Because it is now the ultimate item.
Exactly, and that's where we're the magic item destroyed my game. This is not a magic item destroyed my plot for a session. This is, oh boy, I need to do something about this quick because it solves a lot of problems. Very easily.
I'm watching the fight go on in our live show chat. What about be fans of your players? You can't weaponize that phrase. That's awesome.
And, well, yeah, I mean, but I think he's got a point, you know? I mean, you want to be fans of your players, but at the same time, at least from my perspective, okay, when things like this have happened at my table, you have to remember that the storyteller's a player too.
Yeah.
Okay. And, okay, you want to be fans of your players. You want your players to feel powerful. Players love feeling powerful. As long as your players are having fun, that's great. That's a good time. Mm-hmm. Let chaos reign if your players are having a good time. With the exception that if your storyteller's no longer having a good time, mm-hmm. and if you have utterly ruined the spirit of his plot and derailed the game, and you're not playing the story anymore, you're just playing how can I screw the storyteller over by clever use of game mechanics.
I mean, it's Mary suing the plot.
Yeah. There's a line there. Mm-hmm. And when the storyteller is no longer having fun and they have to throw out half of their stuff because, a mistaken item got added to the game that you found a clever loophole with.
Well, I think it also it forces the storyteller to change the whole tone of the game from, this is a challenge. Now I'm going to have to make the challenges something else. Mm-hmm. And now it's no longer a game of plucky individuals trying to make their way through a story and feel challenged to gods or elite special forces who are basically going on a ice cream run all the time.
Yeah.
But now the problem is that you have to recraft the whole story to say, okay, you went on this ice cream run and come back to emotional problems and stress and your boss hating you because you did the job a different way. And so now it's all political and social and a completely different story.
It's not fun for anybody at that point. Yeah.
I mean, if that's the story they want, that's cool. But at the same time, they might all be like, why do we keep this thing?
Yeah.
If I'm using a tactical nuke every single game to solve every problem, eventually it doesn't solve the problem. It creates a new one.
Exactly. Exactly.
And you end up starting to do, I can't think of, Invincible. Mm-hmm. Now you have to tell the story like Invincible. Yeah. Where it's more about the people than any of the fighting or the action. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So I guess that turns us to the end of this is,
what do you do?
Yeah, once you have this power, how do you start managing it?
Once Pandora's box is open.
And you did a great job of basically compressing everything we saw into some direct points.
All right.
So I'm going to let you hit each one of these and we'll talk each one.
I think we've got 5 different ways we could do this.
Okay.
All right. First off, communication.
Always.
Okay. We communication is always key. You have an honest discussion out of character about the item and maybe even agreeing to tone it down for the betterment of the game. Okay. As a collaborative game, if all parties are not having fun, and that includes the storyteller, you're doing it wrong. It's the only way to do a game wrong.
Yeah.
It's the only time your fun is wrong is when your fun is not universal at the table.
Correct.
Okay.
And that everyone recognizes everyone else's.
Exactly.
If you're sitting at a table and one person's like, I'm having a great time, why aren't you? That's not mutual fun. Yep. That's not cooperative.
So we come to like the assumption of friendship at the table.
Yep.
Look, everybody wants to look out for everybody else's fun. If you just say, as a storyteller, if you've got that trust at your table and you say, like, I made a mistake putting that item in your hands, I either need to tone it down because of the unforeseen implications of it, or maybe I just need to retcon it and put it, give you guys a different item or something like that.
Well, and I think that steps right into the second one, which is the ability to do retconning.
Yeah, retcon.
Yeah. You have the ability to, through discussion or agreement or just a fiat move that you do as a storyteller, which can be a thing. Move.
It doesn't even have to be, like, communication's good. Getting your players to agree to it is good, but you're the storyteller. Don't be afraid to just be like, guys, I'm pulling it.
Yeah, that wasn't intended. I'm making this change because it's hurting the game is a great thing to say.
Yeah.
It's a simple way. It still continues the communication, but there's nothing to say that you have to do that. I think even if it was a short, like, one shot, maybe 3 episodes that you'd made a mistake, pull it. Retcon it. Get it out of there.
It's fine. Your game will go on. I know a lot of people will wring their hands over these two things of like, oh, I can't just pull it back. Yes, you can.
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can. And it'll be fine.
Yes.
Communicate with your players. Don't be a jerk about it, but just be like, I really feel like there were some unintended implications there. I need to fix this.
Yep.
All right. Now, for those of you who do want to handle things in-game, we've got C, the plot complication.
I loved your use it as a key. I think that is a great way. So you force it to go into a slot or lock it in some way or use it up. It's a battery. It's a key. It's a component.
It is now in some way consumable.
Correct.
And what do you know? It needs to be consumed for the next part of our plot. Where you guys need to get to this next dimension or whatever to find where the secret treasure for this thing is for the next big part of the plot. Well, wouldn't you just know it? The magic sword that you've been slaying everything in one hit with is actually the key that goes into the lock for the door for the interdimensional gate.
You've done a great job charging it. Now it's ready to go in.
Yep, they destroy each other on contact, but the gate is open.
Yep, you've just locked the gate open. Great job. And I think that is a way for them to possibly take care of it, but I think it also comes to maybe we don't open the gate. Maybe we figure a different way to open the gate. Can we replicate this thing? Can we do something else with it?
Yeah.
Can we drain the power from it before it goes in there and use it for something else?
Because players don't like letting go of power.
No,
and understandably.
Yeah.
I mean, if you had a magic god-slaying sword, would you want to get rid of it? No, of course not,
No.
So no shade at the players, but, if you're going to deal with it in-game rather than out of game, be prepared for your players to look at it and go, no, you gave us a choice and we choose to keep the overpowered item.
And I think the last one, which I think is probably going to get us the most raised eyebrows from the community. Just let them keep it.
Just let them keep it.
Whatever.
Sometimes it's okay for your players to be powerful.
Yep.
Not everything has to be a struggle. And if everyone's having fun, let them obliterate a few scenarios.
Yeah.
Adjust accordingly.
One of the things that's literally bolded on our document is something we will be talking about once we get it into the sheet, and that is balance is a crutch. Your games don't have to be balanced. Your characters to each other don't have to be balanced. The characters don't have to be balanced to the enemies. That doesn't make anything work right. And you're trying to make that balance isn't going to work. We'll get to that later. So there's nothing wrong with them keeping something that's doing something crazy.
It's a lot about scope and scale, honestly, when it comes down to it. If you I've seen a lot of discussions of like, this just allows players to like walk through walls. How do you challenge them with dungeons if they can just walk through walls? Like, you don't. At a certain point, walls stop being obstacles to your god-slaying level Dungeons and Dragons characters,
Yeah.
You can't challenge them with things like pit traps and walls and overland travel. It just, if your characters are powerful enough that they could go into the abyss and punch Tiamat, then you're not going to challenge them with some random encounter bandits on a 1-hour trip down a rural road.
Nope. You've got to give them something that is a lengthier, longer challenge.
Give them god-level challenges. If that's the power level they're at, okay, so now you've got this overpowered item and they can slay anything that isn't a god. I guess their next opponent is a god.
Yeah. And they're going to have to manage that.
Okay, and maybe that's because they're high profile enough now that they have that. The gods have taken notice. The gods have taken exception to this. The gods feel challenged.
Exactly.
So they're going to rub them out. Okay, maybe that's your next plot. Maybe now they want to get rid of the thing. Oh, good. They're solving the problem for you.
There you go.
Now we can go back to bandits and walls.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, like, I've seen this a lot in Savage Worlds discussions.
Yeah.
And this is a great design philosophy that, like, I've really glomped onto. Is, you know, you see discussions of, and this isn't so much of, like, magic items breaking the games, but just concerns about power in general. And, like, one discussion I remember seeing was like, you know, if my character, if one of my players takes 3 different edges and buys a specialized piece of equipment in this one specific combat situation, they can do this move, this move, this move, and this move, and then roll an obnoxious amount of dice worth of damage. Doesn't that trivialize combat encounters?
Sure.
In that one very specific instance that you just outlined, sure, it does trivialize the combat encounter. And you know what? Good for them. They should. They absolutely should. Because listen to what you just said. They spent 3 advances on it. 3 edges. And a specialized piece of equipment. And this only ever happens if they can make this situation happen in such a way that they can unfold this thing.
Yep.
If they do that, if they spend all those resources and time building the character to do that, boom, let them.
Yeah.
They won.
If the character is literally only good at one thing, sniping, casting specific types of magic, being a tank, great. That's what they're really good at. So what?
Yeah. So I guess what I'm getting at with this part here is like, check and see if your item is actually breaking your game, or if it just breaks a very specific situation in your game. And if it's just a situation, maybe let them do it a couple times, you know?
Yeah.
It's awesome to let them be like, I hold the magic sword aloft, say the words, and smite him, and 1 turn later, wham, the enemy's gone.
Yep.
You wanted it to be in that big epic fight, but you know what? Everybody at the table's high-fiving right now.
Yep.
That's a good moment.
Yeah. The other thing that I always like is the turnaround on that is, if they're doing that enough, that draws attention. Both good and bad.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, it takes them to the next tier of things. If they become a challenge to the gods will take notice.
Or they'll start asking them to do things. Like, hey, we've got followers, but they're not as good as you. I've got this problem.
Yeah.
And you're going to go solve it. Or else that thing is going to get pulverized because you're useless to me.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay.
Yep.
Or guess who gave that to you? Kind of a thing. I always like that concept behind it. So, we do have some questions. Unless you got something else you want to throw at this.
Just the last final thought is,
yeah.
It's okay to give them a super shiny hammer that's really, really good at pounding in nails.
There you go.
Okay? Just make sure that nails are rare and special, and not the focus of your whole campaign.
Yeah, or, as I like to put it, the nails literally feel like them going to dinner.
Yeah.
It's there to connect to another point.
Yes.
So let it go to the side. It's not that big of a deal.
Yep.
So.
All right, questions.
Yes, we have lots. Nevim's got a question. Oh no, I've realized I've given an item to the destroying the game. Is it okay to remove it from the game? Simply put, yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Absolutely.
How can I downgrade its effect and avoid its disastrous effects? Honestly, the best thing you can always do to any kind of an item, if you catch it early enough, you could make it limited. So, like, there's only so many charges in it.
Yeah.
2, you can have... I take this back. I had one that I read that was brilliant. The players got their hands on something that was super powerful. They knew they could use it once a day, kind of a thing. But that's what it said. Like, the rules stated as such.
Yeah.
So after they used it, an imp literally shows up and says, "Thank you very much, I'll be taking that now." What? You've had your one use. Please hand it over. Well, this is mine. It's not how this works. It gets used once per day. Now it is mine, and it goes somewhere else, and somebody else will use it once.
Yeah.
And they're like, but wait, but please hand it over. Let's not make this a scene. And it was like right in the middle of a fight. Like, everybody, there's still there's a bad guy literally holding off to one side, and he comes to rush, and he said, they're like, I go do this hard move. The imp literally puts up his hand and stops him in mid-move. Everything over there is frozen. I said, please hand it over.
Oh my god.
And you're like, this imp is now a new problem.
Oh my god, yeah.
So, yeah, the things like that where you can literally take something completely out of play if you really need to.
Yeah.
And show them something far more dangerous.
As far as like downgrading its effects and avoiding disastrous effects, I think your first move should be communicate out of character, because it's an out of game problem, really.
Yeah,
is really when it boils down to it, it's an out of game problem. An out of game problem should be solved out of game.
Yes.
And so I think probably your best place to do is look at what two rules are intersecting that allow them to do stupid stuff with it, and I say stupid stuff. To do shenanigans is what I meant. Yes.
Shenanigans. Sometimes it's very creative.
To cause shenanigans. Not a derogatory thing, just shenanigans. And just try to tweak one of those rules.
Yeah.
So, like, if it gives advantage and then, someone's saying, like, well, anytime I have advantage, I can do more other stuff. Maybe not make it give advantage, maybe give it, like, a +5 or something.
There you go. There you go. Grab the next one.
All right, so Subjet24, one of our new Patreons.
Yeah, woo.
Is there a way to introduce an amazing artifact item that is used by the player and controlled by the DM without the players feeling like it isn't usable? That way the player feels powerful with an amazing weapon or artifact, but the DM has a peace of mind because the player isn't now completely broken.
The only things that I can distinctly remember like this, was there was a, sword, that had spell effects. The difference was the DM made it intelligent, and so it decided when the spell effects went off, so it was always a negotiation between the wielder and the storyteller. So it was its own plot. Like, what it basically did was he inserted it because he wanted the fighter to roleplay more. And they weren't. Okay. And so he gave them a weapon that could do some magical things. And now they had to literally, like, during combat, have a discussion with the sword. Mm-hmm. Like, I want you to do lightning. Dude, we're inside. This isn't going to work. What do you mean it's not going to work? Go ahead and hit him. No, I'm dead serious. This isn't going to work. Like, don't you know anything? No, you're a big dumb fighter. Let's not do this right now. Just swing.
Right,
just keep swinging.
Right.
You're
just keep swinging. You're doing
great,
amazing.
sweetie.
You're doing amazing, sweetie.
And then, like, the bigger fight of, like, he was fighting this big bad guy, and he was, like, wanting him to use his blood drink effect. And he's like, no. Why? Because I think he's stronger than you, and he might take me. Like, like, uh-oh. Like, possibly losing the sword to the big bad evil guy.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
So, I think you can do stuff like that. At the same time, you've got larger, quote-unquote, magical artifacts like a ship, right? Where you don't necessarily lose control as the DM because they can use it, but on the other side of it, you have things can break down. There can be issues with it, or finagles that have to happen. But it does get them from point A to point B, and they have the ability to upgrade and do other things to it. But it's still temperamental,
Yeah, I gotcha.
So,
I actually really liked how Kids on Bikes handled this. Where the superpowered item was not an item; it was the superpowered character in the group.
Yeah.
And it was not controlled by the DM, but controlled by all of the players collectively.
Different aspects.
That each got an aspect and got to essentially role play how those aspects all went into the middle. And then you could come to a consensus of, like, should the character use this power now? Yeah, okay, they do,
Right.
Therefore, it's never in the hands of just one person, it's in the hands of everybody.
Yep.
I liked that. I think that's for me, just for my tastes, something like that is better than the DM handling it. For two reasons. The DM is already handling so much. That also now I have to babysit your powers too just feels like extra stuff that I don't want to be dealing with. I'm not thinking about when your character can use their powers. I'm thinking about all the things my NPCs are doing, what's going on in my plot, what I'm going to do next, and how I'm going to react to all you guys.
Yep. That's good.
Also, like you mentioned earlier, some players you want to encourage their role play, and by giving it to them, it brings the entire group, the entire table, one step in to, pulls them towards role play.
Yep.
Collectively. Even if they're not role playing their own character, they're still all thinking about what their aspects of the superpowered character are.
Yep.
So,
I like that. I like that. You want to grab the next one?
Yeah, so Tim Saucer asks, what is the best game-breaking item you've given away, and what is the worst?
Ooh.
I really had to think about this one.
You're gonna have to say it, because I'm having to go through my lists in my head.
Yeah, so, I tend to be a little stingy with loot.
Mm-hmm. Not for a bad reason, I would say.
Not for bad reasons. I'm always really gun-shy with,
You don't want it to feel random.
I don't want it to feel random, and I am very afraid of game-breaking items. I'll just say it. I'm very afraid of introducing an item that breaks the game.
That's fair.
Especially like in Dungeons and Dragons, like it was always constant, like, cold sweat of like, crap, I can't give you guys any more treasure because if I do, you're just going to become too powerful, you know? And you were already smiting stuff that I intended to be challenging for you, etc. So I tend to be very stingy with loot because of that. And I tend to also run narrative games, so loot really isn't the focus as much.
Mm-hmm.
That said, that's my disclaimer. Best game-breaking item I've given out is the dragon shouts that the Mad Elf's character Tristan can use.
Yes.
In Savage Worlds, he can spend a Benny to re-roll any power, the damage dice of any power that has the fire trapping.
Right.
Okay, so any of his fire spells. And he gets to add +2 to the roll if he re-rolls the damage.
Mm-hmm.
So he doesn't even have to be a bad roll.
No.
He can just spend the Benny and re-roll it for the extra +2 on top of it.
True.
He's got a second ability that piggybacks off of that one. And this is above and beyond the edges that were like allotted to his character. So this is a special benefit.
Yeah.
2 Bennies, I think, just to use the blast
template?
It's the cone.
Oh.
The fire breath, essentially.
Yes.
Is the second shout. It's 2 Bennies to use that, and he gets a +2 to the damage on it.
That's not bad at all.
Yeah, it's really good, actually. It's a free power, essentially, but he has to burn 2 Bennies for it.
Yeah.
Worst one I've ever given away, and I hate to say it, but it's like the only one I could think of, really. I don't want to say it's game-breaking, it's just that I have to constantly plan around it.
And think about it.
Is Sweeping Beauty.
The broom.
The broom of flying that our party's rogue has, Laralith.
Yeah.
And it's just simply because it allows flight, and therefore I need to plan my encounters in 3 dimensions instead of 2.
Yeah, and you also have to listen harder for movement.
Yeah.
Like, how are you moving right now?
Yes.
Are you off the ground? Are you moving horizontally? Are you moving vertical? It changes.
Yeah.
It changes the whole concept behind it. Yeah. No, I agree. I think the worst wasn't mine. I remember a game. I was in a game, and somebody had gotten a quiver that basically, when you put an arrow into it, you now could continue drawing that arrow.
Okay. So they got like a +5 magical dragon slaying arrow.
Worse.
Oh god.
Worse. They got a magical slot arrow, so they could put a magical spell in their arrow. And then they just put fireball arrows in, or lightning arrows.
Yep.
And that was it. Yep. That's all it took.
Every arrow does 2d6 for the arrow, plus another 8d6 for the fireball.
And they Hawkeyed it.
Yeah.
They never, because originally it was, I've got different kinds of arrows, right? Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, so as long as you have one of those arrows in there, it'll be fine. So now the person had literally a Hawkeye case of fireball, lightning, gas, whatever they wanted, and they were all ridiculously powerful.
Oh, wow.
If they got poisoned by somebody, they would steal the poison arrows and put one of those in there. Mm-hmm. So now they had, night elf poison arrows and stuff.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
Oh, geez.
The best sounds weird. So I was in a Rifts game. Mm-hmm. I should say I was running a Rifts game, and it was surrounding Archie, which was this super powerful AI that basically had gone dormant during the teardown of the Earth.
Okay.
There was a bit of a write-up for it that was actually in the original Rift's book, but not a ton of data, so you could use it. And Archie never left, because Archie was a super powerful AI. He basically would make copies of himself, lesser copies of himself, in really cool robots, and send them out, kind of like the synths from Fallout.
Yeah, okay.
It's very similar to that. So they looked like body doubles, but they weren't nearly as organic. They were just super high-tech androids. So the group came across one of these, but it wasn't programmed. It got wiped somehow. And so they were constantly trying to figure out how they could use it. Because they could give it commands. Short-term commands. And it would do those things. It would just follow us, and it would follow them comfortably, or go sit down over there, and it would go sit down over there. But they couldn't give it a 2-day command set.
Sure.
Kind of a thing. Read this book and learn how to drive. It could do that, and then they could tell it how to drive. But one of the most beautiful things about it was they went from wanting to try and figure out how to get one of them uploaded into it to figuring out how to get it to learn longer and longer things.
Oh, okay.
And as it did, I just slowly gave it intelligence of its own. It learned their language style. So when they're okay, go over there and watch this area. Sure, whatever. And they were
did you just sass me?
Did you just sass? And actually, he used your tone. What? Did he sound like me? No, his own voice. But he sounded, same kind of tone, started swearing, started doing whatever they would do. Started drinking.
Yeah.
And they thought it was one of the coolest things ever, because it became a party member of importance to them, because it could lift things, it could do better than any of them at maybe one thing at a time.
Okay,
but it totally changed the arc of the game and the story.
Well, cool.
And it made them want to go find out where it was from.
Yeah.
So that was my whole point. Yeah.
Sounds great.
So that's the one I can think of that was good, and it seems like it was bad, but it actually worked out really well. So, Agni, what gives you as a DM
drives you?
Or drives you as a DM storyteller to introduce a strong magic item or artifact in the game? It's cool. It seems like a good idea at the time.
Yeah. For me, like I said, I think it's mostly about extending a person's character arc. I gave the dragon shouts to Matthew's character because he's a dragonborn, and what's dragonborn without cool shouts to do?
Yeah.
We all played Skyrim. We all scoured Tamriel scoured Skyrim for any dragon walls we could find, so we can get the third word for these things and be super powerful.
Oh yeah.
I think that's mostly it for me.
I've dialed back from giving plot items, and mostly for me it's quality. It's quality of life stuff. You guys hung out with the dwarves or the gnomes for a month, right? And did all this stuff. You have goggles that help you with gnomish stuff. Great. That now makes those gnome checks easier. When I need them to be challenging, they still have a potential to be challenging.
Yeah, sure.
When it's important, but the rest of the time, you now feel powerful when you make those rolls. Great. And every time there's something that comes up, one of my players was like, okay, I'm putting on the goggles and opening the book. Do I have anything that I can use those for? Sure. Make a roll.
Yeah.
And it feels powerful and it feels good, but it's a quality of service for me, because now I know that check is 95% of the time going to be great. And we move on from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it doesn't feel like it's just a gift. I'm just telling you, because you know this. It's an active participation thing.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. If you can quality of service yourself to a point, especially with games like Dungeons & Dragons, where as the levels progress, your players are going to get lazy. And they're going to use powerful things against not powerful problems because they can. And then it's no longer convenient for you to have inconveniences. You want to get to the meat and potatoes of moments, so you have to figure out things that you can do for quality of service for you as the storyteller.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big thing for me, is figuring out how I can handle that through effectively, and I'm going to put it in quotes, magic items.
Yeah.
Whether it's a person, place, or a thing. So.
Agreed. All right. That wraps up our questions.
Yeah.
So next week's topic is going to be another one of our storytelling 101s. And we're going to be talking about writing plots. It's probably one of the biggest, most intimidating things for new storytellers is, how do you write interesting plots that aren't scripts?
Yeah, and that aren't railroaded.
Yeah.
Like, what components do you really need? What things do you need to back away from? And how do you find the right place? We've talked about it before. We've gone over this multiple times because it is one of the hardest things to do.
Absolutely.
And I think we're going to try and do it in a convenient way if we can.
I think it'll be okay. I think it's a lot of like we do this stuff unconsciously, but we're gonna bring it to a thing. Anyways, you can find us on Twitter at @ST_conclave. Listen to us, on Instagram at @ST_conclave. Listen to us live every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, mixlr.com/storyteller-conclave. And join us up on our Discord. You can find the link to our Discord on our Twitter, as well as storytellerconclave.com.
We'd like to thank our Patreon members who help us out every month, especially our named members, Knox in the Box, Sam, the Arcane Asylum, Sparkle Mosin, Vedran, and Hulavu. We really appreciate everything you do. Our pre-show music is by Arcane Anthems. You can find that at patreon.com/arcaneanthems. Our intro music is Beyond the Warriors by Geefrog. You can find that at geefrog.bandcamp.com or on Google Music. And our outro music, which you're hearing right now, is Only Our Footprints in the Sand by Midair Machine. You can find that at freemusicarchive.org.
And big shout out as always to our families, Vicky and Sean. Thank you so much for loving and supporting us. All of our friends who sat with us at our tables over the years to give us these great stories to share with you.
And the magic items that we give you, they're way overpowered.
And you, every single one of our listeners. We love you so much.
Love you guys.
Good night.